Alright guys, so this is a super cool and fooling card trick using a completely shuffled and borrowed deck of cards. So, like I said, completely impromptu, we can have the spectator take the cards and shuffle them in the entire beginning part of this trick, okay? They can check everything, and once the deck has been shuffled, I'll tell them to still hold on to it, but to place it on the table and try to cut, as the best you can, 3 roughly equal piles, and really try to like measure it out. Just, you know, if there's something uneven, you could sort of maneuver it around, but try your best to really make them as equal as possible, just because I want all the cards to be evenly distributed. But now, pick up every single pile, you can shuffle it again. It genuinely doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me at all. Every pile is shuffled, but you're gonna settle on one pile. So let's say they pick this one up, they're gonna shuffle it, and then whenever they're done shuffling, just remember whatever card ends up on the top of their pile. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys here, but I'm gonna turn my head away so I'm not looking, but I'm holding this up to the camera, so I hope you can see it, okay? And when they're done remembering it, they're gonna place it back on top of their pile. And then I tell them to take their pile and drop it on top of any of the other 2 on the table. So they'll drop your pile here and then take the last remaining pile and drop that on top. So it basically buries your card somewhere in the center of the pack. So if I were to now turn back around, because remember, the spectator was doing all of this in their own hands, I was turned around the entire time. So if I were to now turn around and tell you that I could find your card, is there any way I could find your card? I mean, theoretically, no, it doesn't really make any sense. What if I were to now cut the deck? Does that make it even more impossible? They would say yes. Well, what if I was to pick up the deck and give it a shuffle? Does that make it even more impossible? And they say, oh yeah, I mean, now there's just genuinely no way I could know what your card is or where it is in the pack. But I think we can try this because I know already that your card was a spade or a diamond, correct? Yes, and it was also a black card. Yeah, okay, so I can pick up on that. But I still don't know exactly what the number is, and I feel like it might be a lower number if I'm not mistaken. So I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think I might actually go with my gut feeling here. I think I actually know exactly what your card is, and I think I'm gonna go with this. Remember, completely borrowed, shuffled deck of cards. The spectator placed their card in themselves. Cards were shuffled afterwards too. Somehow, I found your card, the 2 of spades. I do hope that this was your card. But yeah, that's the trick, guys. It's super fooling, super awesome, and it's actually pretty simple to do. So if you'd like to learn how it's done, be sure to stick around for the tutorial. Alright guys, so here's the tutorial for the trick that you just saw. So this is a really cool trick that I came up with recently. I just wanted to find a cool, easy, fair way to have a spectator lose a card in the middle of the deck, seemingly, and just have it be completely hands-off. But there is actually a very simple way for you to know roughly where it is in the pack, because you know the rough location of where it is. It's about 1/3 of the way down. And if you know that, you can use some fishing to figure out some more information about the card. And once you know that, then you'll actually be able to pretty much perfectly identify what their card is within about 4 to 5 cards. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do this with a completely borrowed and shuffled deck of cards. So you can hand the deck over to the spectator. They can take the deck and hold it and do everything for pretty much the entire first half of this trick. The only time you'll need to take the cards back is once the card has been placed in the deck. But in the entire beginning section of the trick, the spectator takes the cards and they are going to shuffle them in the beginning and then split the cards into roughly 3 equal piles. And really try to stress the fact that these should be equal, because that will just help the method of the trick a little bit better, because it's better if the piles are more equal in size, okay? The order of these cards genuinely does not matter whatsoever. So you can tell the spectator to further shuffle each pile. And this is just sort of enforcing the idea that this is a genuinely random shuffled deck and there's no setup whatsoever. But once the spectator has shuffled the piles, they can pick up any 3 of the piles to continue shuffling. And you tell them to shuffle until they're satisfied, and once they're happy, to look at the top card of the deck. So in this case, we have the 6 of clubs. This will be our selection. And once the spectator has remembered the card, they'll leave it on the top of their pile, and now they will be asked to replace their pile on top of either one of the remaining 2 on the table. So they'll go ahead and do that. You tell them to take the last remaining pile that you haven't touched and to place that on top of the rest of the deck, so it basically will bury their card in the center of the pack. If the spectator has done this correctly, which they should obviously be able to do because it's very simple, and if they're following your clear instructions, you should now basically have their selection somewhere within the top between like 17 to 22 cards. That's going to be the range of where their selection is. So it's going to be one of these couple of cards here. And you can see the six of clubs is right here. But of course, it could be any of these other cards if the spectator had cut a different size pile. That's all you really need to know is that the card is located roughly a third of the way down. So you're going to turn back around and tell the spectator, is there any way I could know what your card is? They're going to say no. And you ask them, what if I were to cut the deck? And what you're going to do now is you're going to try your best to cut exactly half of the deck. It does not have to be 26 exactly, but just kind of eyeball and cut as close to half as possible. And once you do that, you're going to cut half the deck to the table, and then you're going to cut the other half on top. So you're essentially going to do a genuine cut of the deck. Just make sure it's close to half. And you tell the spectator, now if I cut the deck, is there any way I could know where your card is now? And they'll say, probably not. And then you're going to pick up the cards and you're going to tell them, well, what if I shuffle the deck? And what you're going to do is essentially shuffle the first like 20 or so cards. Just kind of do them singly. But the first 20 or so cards actually do not matter whatsoever. And once you've done that, you're actually going to now in-jog the next card and then just throw the rest of these cards on top. And now you can just kind of drop these on the table. And it looks like this is a genuinely free shuffle, but the bottom half of the deck has actually not been disturbed. Sorry, I'll move this a little closer to the camera so you can see. But essentially what I have is an in-jogged card underneath here that whenever I want to, when I want to pick up this deck, I can actually use my thumb here to pick up at the in-jog card. And I will make sure that that ends up as the bottom card. And now I'm going to pick that up and then place the rest of the deck on top. And what that will do is it will undo the cut that I just did, and it will maintain the bottom half of the deck, which is exactly what I need to maintain because now the bottom half of the deck contains their selection. Now you're going to do one of my favorite fishing techniques, which is created by Danny D'Ortiz, and I've taught this in many of my other videos before. I love to use this technique. It's one of my all-time favorites, but you're essentially going to figure out what the suit of their card is in just 2 questions. So you first mention to them, just kind of casually, that you already know that their card is a spade or a diamond. Now there's 2 options here. The spectator will say yes or no. Whichever answer they provide will tell you exactly which group of suits their card is. So if they say yes to that question, then you've eliminated the clubs and the hearts because now you know their card is a spade or a diamond. But in this case, their card was a 6 of clubs, so they will answer no to that question. But that will tell you now that their card is a club or a heart. So you see how either answer yes or no will essentially narrow down 2 of the suits. And now to get the final narrowing down answer, you're essentially going to ask them the color and you say, it was a black one, right? And they can either, once again, say yes or no. And this will tell you which of the 2 remaining suits their card is. If they say yes to that question, in this case, they will say yes, then you'll know it was a club because you only had clubs and hearts remaining. So that is essentially how you'll be able to determine the suit of their card. So once you know the suit of their card, that's all you really need to know. You're going to pick up the deck now and you're going to be spreading through the bottom half of the deck and you're going to be noting what the bottom 4 to 5 clubs are. Now, I say 4 to 5 because there is a possibility, and I can actually see it in this case right here. I actually have 4 clubs that are actually next to each other. Now, this is a very, very rare occurrence and would normally not happen. But the fact that I have so many clubs here on the bottom is a little bit more risky because ideally you would only have maybe like 1 here and then maybe like 1 here and then 1 over here. Like they would be very spread out, and you can try this yourself. That should be the norm, but this is a very rare scenario here. It's a good thing this happened in the tutorial because now I can sort of go over what to do in this case. Whatever happens, you're going to basically assume that the card that they picked was a lower number. Once again, just sort of narrow down the range of their card because you can sort of look through the cards here, and if it was a lower number, then you'll only have the 2 and the 3 here to work with. And I'm also sort of looking at the 10 here as an option as well, because that is a club that's sort of close by. The 5, I would say, is a little bit far away, so I would probably disregard that. I would only look at the clubs within, you know, this amount of cards, which is, I don't know, around 15 to 17 cards or so. That's the amount of cards I'll only be sort of noting, looking at here. But I see these 4 clubs here. we have a 6, 3, 2, and a 9, and a 10 here. I'll use the 10 as well. If I tell the spectator that I think their card is low, they'll tell me no. That's going to actually eliminate the 3 and the 2. So I'll only be left now with the 6, the 9, and the 10, in which case I can do 3 multiple outs. So I can just cold these cards up to the top, or I could just cut them casually to the top as well. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. But you just kind of cut these cards to the top, say, I think it might be this one, maybe this one, maybe this one. And then you can either do, sort of just remember what order you put them in, and then you could set up for a triple lift. Say, I think I've actually placed your card on top. What was your card? And they'll say 6 of clubs. I had to do a triple lift in this case, but if it was the 9, you would do a double lift, and if it was the 10, you would do a single. So you sort of just prepare for 3 outs that way. But as you can see in the performance that I did, I was very confident in just pulling out their card, the 2 of spades. And that was because when I asked them the question of if it was a low card, that was like the only low spade in the entire group that I was looking at. So if they answered that it was a low card and that's like the only possibility within the bottom 17 cards or so, then you can be pretty confident that you'll have a dead on hit, and you can just sort of take the card out and reveal it very, very freely like that. Most cases you will have to prepare for at least 2, maybe 3 outs. In this case, we had a lot of outs, but that would hopefully not be the norm. But of course, if you are experienced enough, you would know how to prepare for that. And the way I do it is usually just doing a triple lift or a double lift like this, but you could set up other ways as well. Like you could palm one in your pocket if you'd like to do that. There's many, many possibilities, but that is essentially the entire trick. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I will always do my best to answer them. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. And if you did, see you guys for the next one. Bye.